Welcome to this house of memory and celebration. We live in difficult times. During the Soviet era, many of the writers were not allowed to publish or speak. Boris Pasternak had an international bestseller, Dr. Zhivago, not allowed to be published in the Soviet Union. He was not allowed to give readings. And then Khrushchev came in and there was a little bit of a thaw. And after many decades, Pasternak was allowed to give a poetry reading. He didn't know if anybody knew who he was anymore. It had been so long. The big auditorium was full. He began reading and was so nervous, he actually dropped his poem. And as he reached down to pick it up, the audience picked up where he was and said every word perfectly. This poem had never been published. It had been passed around in carbon paper copies, and everybody who loved literature had read it and memorized it. And he looked up at the audience and just said, oh my friends, oh my dear friends. Well, we have to bind together when times are difficult. It is particularly important to support this base station here, from which we do good things and hold the light in times of darkness. That's the service today. It's meditation time. Get comfortable in the chair. Be aware of your feet on the floor. Be aware of your breathing. Be aware of those around you breathing. Be aware of the air in the room and the light and people near you, and that there are people in this room who care about you, who you like working on projects with, who you've known for a while. Some aren't in the room, but be aware of them too. Some aren't with us anymore. Be aware of them too. Just think about the treasures that are in this room with you this morning. So it's our 40th anniversary. That's ruby. They say that rubies have a flame in them if you look very closely, an enduring flame that lasts a long time. Congratulations on 40 years of putting up with each other. Congratulations on 40 years of forgiving me for my jokes. I am deeply grateful. In the world of temporary things, live oak has lasted the test of time. In classic symbolism, the ruby represents spiritual awakening. It's a connection to the heart chakra, the pursuit of knowledge, information, and openness of giving and receiving. It is unconditional love, prosperity, courage, and vigor. It is an enduring flame. A few moments on our history. In 1985, the downtown congregation decided that there should be another group in town. So we called ourselves the New UU. Gail was at the very first organizing meeting. I think Pat Johnson may have been also. I was there. And what to do? There was a few people in the room and lots of dreams. So we arranged to meet in each other's homes for a while on Fridays. Ron and Rachel Doctors were from a Jewish background. They wanted to meet on Fridays, so we're meeting on Fridays. And that was okay for a little while, and then we needed some space, an actual meeting room. We got some space at the Goleta Community Center. At one time we had a treasure sale. I think the picture that's up there is about the time we had a treasure sale. Again, we're meeting on Fridays. I think the room was not available on Sunday, and we were starting to have a tradition, and that was okay. We're getting a little more people, and the idea of calling a minister came up. Several people didn't want that. Very strong feelings this should be a lay-led group. That's the whole idea. If you want a minister, there's a downtown congregation. Let's do it this other way. But there was a really good minister available, Bets Wenicky, lived in town, we might be able to get her. We didn't have any money, but anyway, hopes were big. And we had our first split. We lost people when we decided, she wasn't a settled minister yet. This was an organizing, what was it called? I'm forgetting now, but she came, new congregational organizer with some funding from the UUA. We had somebody on the UUA board named Peter Haslund, and he knew the rules and where things were, where little pockets of money were, and we got some help. And so, all right, we're kind of not wanting to meet on Fridays anymore. This made some more people unhappy. You know why there need to be two congregations. This is an old Jewish story that I tell often. Everybody needs one temple they would not step foot in. Seriously, if you're not getting along with somebody, it's really nice. Okay, you know, I think I'll go over to the other one. So we're a covenanted group, so we do a lot to get along, and we have problem-solving techniques, and we have help we can get. But if it really comes to shove, you don't have to stop being a Unitarian Universalist. You have another option. And so some in the room here were involved in the Santa Barbara Unitarian Society and are now here and part of this all these years later. Finally, in 1985, we started looking for a new name. We came up with Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I wasn't at the meeting, Gail was. I did send a note in. I wanted Cathedral Oaks UU Congregation. And they didn't like it. They said, too churchy. And I think, yeah, I'm a little churchy. But they like the Live Oak, they like the Oak part. So that ended up becoming Live Oak. I was very strong, and I had a big underscoring on the note. I gave it to a woman named Ann Corner, who was sort of chairing the meeting. And I wanted congregation. There weren't very many UU groups called congregation, but I had just visited Atlanta, one of the biggest congregations. The congregations in the South are among the biggest because they are surrounded by people they do not agree with. So we came up with a name, and we had a minister. We didn't really have a place. Couldn't get space on Sundays at the Goleta Center. I was working at what later became called Pacifica Graduate Institute. They had a little office with a couple of classrooms just this side of Magnolia Center on Hollister. It was an old craftsman house, not unlike our farmhouse, a little bit, tiny bit bigger. And we were crammed in there. Do I have the picture up there? And this was the day we passed the book around. I am actually signing the book in the picture. And there's Bets in white, and we're all kind of jammed in. There's a living room and then some sliding doors and what had been at one time a dining room, and then there was the kitchen. Some of us are standing back there kind of trying to get a sight line in these rooms that sort of line up. We did it for a while. We called ourselves the Church in the Trunk. That was the car trunk. Actually, it was several trunks. The RE would come out of Pat Johnson's trunk. I think they had 3 kiddos at the time, but we were doing it. We were doing Live Oak. Finally, we needed some more space. There's a place in IV called the University Religious Center, put on by the different denominations. We were able to rent a little office and use the hall there for our services, which there's some competition for that, so we lucked out and got that. And this meant setting up. People would show up early, put up all the chairs, and afterwards take down all the chairs. I think we didn't usually call this, but I like to call it the church in the box. We graduated from the trunk. Peter Haslund, who built this, who built a good craftsman, built a big rolling box with all our stuff in it that the URC allowed us to stick in a corner or a closet someplace. So not everything had to come out of the trunk. It's a lot of work. I mean, Larry Bishop was particularly loyal at getting there very early, down from Buellton, where he was living even at that time, and set up all the chairs and stick around and take them all. Finally, we needed more space. We started meeting over across the street at St. Michael's Episcopal, which was a nice, big, traditional church. I think this was taken the day we installed Betts as our settled minister, moving her upstairs to a real minister, not just an organizer, although she'd been our minister for a long time by now. And had a big installation where I said a word or two. And there's a big cross. You can't see it in this picture. In this picture, you really see the cross. It was held up by these little tiny wires, and it was a heavy-looking thing. And I was just thinking, you know, it's right up behind the pulpit. So you say something wrong, and that cross could swoop down and take you out. Maybe that's my own religious wounding coming up here. I had a brilliant idea. We were getting quite a few people. I thought we should advertise. The local, there's no Goleta paper to speak of, but the Nexus at the university, that's our kind of people. Let's run some ads. It was a lot of money. It was about $1,000, this project of running, I don't know, half a dozen ads. We came up with the money and we ran the ads. The UUA had put something out, did you know so-and-so was a Unitarian? Things like, they were catchy, and we didn't have to pay for the layout. We could run the ad with our little line at the bottom. One person inquired, one for the project. And I'm, a little bit embarrassed at board meetings for having really pushed it hard. I brought the idea in and kind of lobbied for it. That one person was Barbara Dunaway, who became a pillar of the congregation and served on the board, served on everything. When it came time to buy this property, she was very active in that project. And when she died, she left us some money. Anyway, so sometimes a project doesn't look like it's working, and it is working. Finally, we start getting this idea of buying a property. It was a lot of money. Peter Haslund and Dick Cousineau found this property, 1 acre, an old farmhouse, 1916 farmhouse, a garage, and a water tower with a tank on it, water tank on it. We got rid of the water tank at some point. Didn't need a swimming pool, not a little beyond our reach. It was $290,000. It seemed like an unbelievably huge amount of money. How could we do that? We had various guidance from the denomination. We had a rep out here, and they looked over our budget, how long we'd been around, how many people we had. You can't do it. You're not ready. You're not ready. If you take that on, we'll crush you. We had this quiet, mild-mannered member named Joe Hutchins. Later moved down to Ventura, and he passed away a few years ago. There's a stone out for Joe Hutchins. And he spoke up at this meeting. He didn't usually speak up. He spoke up, who are you to tell us we're not ready? I mean, and well, apparently we were ready because we did it. And in hindsight, what an incredible bargain. What a wise move. But at the time, it was a big stretch. There weren't that many of us. But during the negotiations, now I've lost the name again. What was the old man's name? Mr. Harold. Mr. Harold, I think he had grown up. I've seen an old picture from the 20s of the house, and there's some kids on the porch. I think he grew up here. And there were several, his sister had sold her piece off to the church up north of us. And his brother lived up behind here, and he didn't want to sell to another church, or the sister, somebody didn't want to. So Mr. Harold was very ambivalent. He liked us. And Peter and Dick said, Kristen, he's old and single. Go visit him. And she said, actually, it was Barbara Dunaway would show up with plates of cookie and chat with him. And it was Barbara that kind of won him over. Anyway, we got the place. Had to raise some money. So this was the picture. And Tom and Gail Bomey brought this snapshot out to Peter Haslund and Best, brought it out to everybody, and said, this is what we can buy, but we have to raise a lot of money. Well, Peter looked at, he sent me this copy just this week to help me with this sermon. He was taken with the street sign. There's a street sign out there that says this, but it's not in words anymore. It's just a little diagram. It says, N divided road. And he just thought that was so symbolically perfect that he wrote a big check, and so did Betts. And here we are. Notice all the trees and everything. It was a working farm, or a remaining piece of what had been a working farm. So we purchased the property and got in here and needed a space to meet. Well, you know how tiny the rooms are in the farmhouse. Dick Cousineau got in there and said, okay, here's what we should do. We should bust out these walls, because if you think of the fireplace room over toward the street in the middle, there's what had been a bedroom over on this side, which is the RE room. There had a small bedroom over on this side, which is the minister's office. He said, break out these walls, and then we can get about 65 people in here. And our architect, Ken Kruger, is a great guy we'd all known forever from the downtown church. He said, first of all, just in terms of construction, these are load-bearing walls. That would be very tricky to do, and it wouldn't give you very much space. You're going to need more space than that. You need to build a hall. No, we can. Dick was a guy who got his feet planted. He had strong opinions. Well, he's not alone in that matter. Attend our congregational meetings and you will. Anyway, we didn't follow his advice. And there's some plaques in the fellowship hall for people that kicked in for the capital campaign to buy the property and build the hall and later build this room here. So the next slide is the project, and Ken designed something that had a kind of farmy look to it, so it would match the house. So we have this aesthetic here, even though we have these two really functional modern buildings, they have a slight old-timey feel to them, so that the whole campus works together. I really like the casualness of it, the comfortable quality. And we weren't going to build, when it came time to build this, we weren't going to build the kind of hall that is long and narrow with an aisle up the middle. That's a processional design. That implies hierarchy, because this is then, the focus is up here. If you build something that's circular or semicircular, it implies relationship. The center then is in the circle, not up front. So the fellowship hall project was in 1994, and then we had a deck where we could gather, and I'm not sure, I think that fellow walking along is Jim Proctor, who organized the first choir, which was about a half dozen people, including Helgi Nelson. And Kristen, when I was visiting with people, gathering little stories, said, yeah, well, he had a kind of lovely voice. Well, it had been a lovely voice. It was a little past his prime. It had a pretty heavy vibrato in it, but he could find the notes. But he couldn't find the beat. And the choir would end, and then Helgi would end. It was fun. It was fun. So I'm mostly going to dwell on the early stories, but in 2004, Betz Weinecke retired after 18 years and was granted Minister Emerita status. And then we called Erica, and Reverend Erica was a big party. There's always a big party, a welcoming party in her installation and that. And Jerry was recounting that Erica was very well organized. She had been in a congregation before us that was kind of chaotic, and I think she was still in a little shock from it, because she was sort of over-organized, which might have been, closing the barn door, because we were pretty well organized. And she said, not enough people have signed up for cleanup, and she was nervous, and Jerry says, yeah, don't worry about that. We've been setting up chairs and taking down chairs, and we just show us what needs to be done. He says, no, there's only one person on here, this isn't going to work. Don't worry about it, Erica. And it was too late, and so instead of calling around, sure enough, the whole party went on. At the end of the party, everybody stayed and cleaned up everything, and Erica says, I've been involved in a lot of churches. I've never seen that before. That's the spirit that we're called on for today. I want to just mention Thomas Anastasi because he touches my heart. I think he's a beautiful guy. These screens that you're looking at right now, he got in here, he says, we need huge screens. We need really big screens. You're the interim minister raising money at this point. It's a fair amount. They're kind of expensive. There's also the gear to run them and everything. Got to have the screens. And he lobbied. And he was a very persuasive guy, extremely charming. Good pianist too, Kevin. He would move the pianist aside and take over. He had been a lounge pianist and a stand-up comic, and I didn't think his technique was fabulous, but terrific energy and a kind of gospel tinge. He'd come from some kind of fundamentalist background, and we could rock. It was great fun. That was Reverend Thomas. I'm going to stop with the history stories. We have the energy of the people that gave their attention, their love, their labor, and their money to make this work. Some of them are out there, you can visit them. And I've always liked memorials and cemeteries and memorial books and all that. I want to see the past. You can sort of see the past because it's sitting here, but I want to remember the people. One thing about being involved in a place like this is you're with people that will remember you and tell tall tales about you and a little gossip and your terrible catastrophe long after you are here. I noticed as I took this snapshot that Carl and Sylvia Sachs have stones. They were long divorced and rather bitter at each other. I'm thinking, well, they didn't get to choose where the stones went, and there they are right next to each other. So in the coffee time, tell more stories. I'll tell one that I know I've told before, but it's a good story. So thank you for putting up with it. This is when the Stewardship Committee was going over the rolls and noticed that by far the richest person in the congregation, probably the richest guy in town, was not only a member, but had never contributed. He didn't show up much, but he was on the rolls. And they said, well, what's going on here? He said, well, he's really hard. You can't even get in to see him. We had one really determined person on the committee said, I'm going to get in to see him, and did. And got in his office somehow and said, we have been carrying you as a member for years, and I took the trouble of reading the annual report of your corporation, which is very successful, very prosperous, and I noticed what you get paid. That's a lot of money. Well, did the corporate report mention that my mother is ill with extremely expensive medical bills? Or that I have 3 children in expensive private schools? Or that my brother, who has a wife and 3 children, was disabled in an accident and can't work? And the visitor said, well, no, that wasn't in the corporate report. I'm so sorry. Well, if I don't give them money, why would I give it to you? Love this. So my little teaching story for today is stone soup. You know the story. And so I won't even tell the whole story, okay? A wanderer comes down. Well, the one I found has a girl at the center of it, which is a little different. And she lives with her old mother, and they don't have a lot to get by, so she's of an age to go find her way in the world. And she is traveling and quickly runs through the food that her mother had packed for her and shows up at this little village. Along the way, she had picked up a little stone that she thought was pretty or interesting or something, and she asks if anybody could spare a little food. No, we didn't have a good harvest. I don't think anybody has any. Tries several houses. Nothing, she's not going to get lunch. This isn't happening here. So she brings out this stone and says, well, I was wondering if somebody had a pot I could just borrow, because I've got this magical stone, and I was going to make stone soup. Oh, I could make a lot. You could have some too. Stone soup? What kind of rock is that? We've got a kettle, and they bring out this big pot and fill it with water, and they get some firewood, start getting the water, and she very carefully puts the magical stone in that. It's just a pretty stone she picked up. She starts stirring. She says, oh, this is going to be good. This is really going to be delicious. I mean, could use a little salt. Maybe some parsley. But you folks don't, oh, well, salt and parsley, we probably could manage it. Well, actually, the lady comes out with a whole apron full of parsley. They got a lot of parsley, and it doesn't last that long. Okay, I keep that in there, and some salt. Maybe it's just a little pepper. Yes, pepper. Oh, this is going to be good. You know the story. Sure could use a carrot. Well, a few carrots. I mean, carrots are just so nice in soup, don't you think? Well, yeah, I think my neighbor has some carrots. Anyway, you know the story. And gradually, nobody gives a lot. But they do have things tucked away, and it wasn't a horrible harvest. It was a little weak, but they were just talking poor. They didn't want to share. They were in fear. They were in that fear of, I'm not going to have enough. It's a terrible thing. I think I got mine from the Depression. I wasn't here in the Depression, but my parents were, and they passed it along. And they meant well. They had times when there wasn't food on the table, and they were very proud. There was always something on the table. Sometimes it was just a small plate of lima beans. I remember that. I have no idea what year the reference is on that plate of lima beans, but I was raised on the idea of scarcity. My father was doing well. We did have some lima beans, but there was some other stuff. There was a whole meal going with it. And so time comes to share the soup, and it's got everything from everybody's cellar and some potatoes and turnips and all kinds of good stuff in there. And they have this wonderful, that is some rock. That is an incredible magic trick you did, young lady. Thank you for this wonderful. And they also have a really good time. And at the end, they bring out some bread and cheese and stuff for her journey. They've been holding. Okay. So it's a very familiar story of how on very little you can have a wonderful time. If everybody chips in, that is, if everybody gets past their scarcity consciousness and say, well, I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to be okay tomorrow, and yes, I can spare. That place, it takes a little inner pressure. It takes a little overcoming. I like to think of the story as, well, we're the girl, Live Oak is the stone. That's the church in the trunk, still here, still chugging along after all this. And we're all these parts. We're the one that has some parsley and has some salt and has some carrots and in the end has some bread and cheese too. Okay. So what do we learn? Well, it's not a glamorous process. Sometimes it feels like we're just stirring a pot with stone and water. Is this really going to go anywhere? But then we remember magic has worked before. Things have happened here when we pitch in. Maybe we can pull this off. We give a little, others come. Other parts of ourselves step forward. It's not that we're wandering beggars. We don't need to play tricks on ourselves. Well, maybe we do a little bit, just to get past that feeling of limited and to find the more abundant part of ourselves. So what I'm saying up here is, folks, we need some carrots. We need some cabbage, maybe even a few tomatoes for flavor. The barbarians are on the rampage. People of conscience must gather together and double down their commitment. We need our liberal congregation now more than ever. I'm thinking of some of the people who aren't here. You were mentioning Jim Colfax. I think okay, we had this guy with a beard. This was back in the URC days, and kind of quiet. And then there was a writing workshop or something, and he reads this little piece, and he says, I used to be a girl. We didn't know. And then Jim joins the men's circle, and the men's circle completely, this was a big moment for him and for the men's circle. And later, one of our founders, Paul Golis, became Paula Golis. We were supporting this a long time ago. I mean, we're a welcoming congregation. We're in on this and we're doing it visually, but we've been at it quietly for a long time. We're that kind of place. Now, we live in a tension between that part of ourselves that wants to make sure our own personal immediate needs are met. That's important. In the mythic tradition, there was a goddess of the household named Hestia, and she always made sure there was something in the hearth. And she was in charge of charity. She'd check to make sure there was enough first, and then she would take care of visitors in need. This is one of those moments when you are being asked to declare your true self. So the action steps, well, we're embracing community. Remember how crucial that is. Remember Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. First, it's survival, air, water, food. Then it's safety, shelter, some money for tomorrow. And the third is belonging. We need belonging to thrive. We need belonging to own our own humanity. It's that important. Another thing from the story, I would say, identify your stone. What is your magical stone? Oh, at the end of the story, she sticks it in her pocket, thinks, maybe I know how to get along in the world. I might need this again. Okay, you have unique qualities, resources you bring to the table. Talent, skill, personal strengths. And in this little workshop, this common endeavor, we learn, I wanted to be able to do what I'm doing this moment. And it was first in the downtown church, which was a big room with a high-flying pulpit. You get up there, you go, it's really kind of daunting, and got mentored and got some help and encouragement and got a little better at it. The jokes never got better, but my nerves did. So identify what it is you want to develop in yourself and see how this place helps you. Remember how much you learn about collaboration. If you have any tendency to go off in your workshop and do things by yourself, you rather quickly learn it goes far better if there's a team. There are better ideas. You bring your best, other people bring their best. Some of the ideas don't make it, but the end product is more than the sum of the elements. Notice the many different parts of your own personality. For the story, it's all the different townspeople with all the different ingredients. You're not only on teams with many different kinds of people, many different kinds of you show up on that team, and this collaboration tends to help us develop parts of ourselves that have been neglected. This place helps us develop our creativity. Trying to run all this on very little makes us very creative, and we keep coming back and finding new ways to do things. Celebrate the small moments, as we do yet another stewardship campaign. Celebrate that we can do it. Celebrate that we will do it, and that we'll get through another year. And we've been drawing down some of our reserves to get by in the last couple of years. We don't want to do that. We want to get the number up a little more so we're at least even. And we can. Start with a stone. Share your time. Keep listening to people. Stay with the gratitude. Oh, and when the soup is done, celebrate. Be sure to celebrate. We have complicated feelings about money. Remember that it's not about the size of our houses. It's the size of our hearts that makes our lives rich and beautiful. Appreciate the process, what it does for us, what it does to us to be generous. We are in difficult times. Stick close to your dear friends. Namaste. Blessed be, and so it goes.